Hello, and thanks for clicking on this video and checking it out. I hope you've been with us since day one. This is day 7. And if you look in the playlist that's on the site, you'll find an entire playlist for the book of John. So let us begin. We're going to begin in chapter 2, verses 13 through 25. And here's what the letter from John says. It says, "The Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers were sitting there. And making a whip of cords, he drove them out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, 'Take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of trade.' His disciples remembered that it was written, 'Zeal for your house will consume me.' So the Jews said to him, 'What sign do you show us for doing these things?' And Jesus answered them, 'Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up.' The Jews said, 'It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you will raise it up in 3 days?' But he was speaking about the temple of his body. When therefore he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the words that Jesus had spoken. Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover Feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man." A couple of things to give some context. First, the Passover was a Jewish memorial day, remembering the time that the Jews were slaves in Egypt and what God had done to save them. They were oppressed by the Pharaoh, or the king of Egypt, and he would not allow them to leave and worship God in the desert. So, in order to force Pharaoh to change his mind, God sent 10 devastating plagues, after which Pharaoh still would not let the Jewish people go out and worship God in the desert. They wanted to go about 3 miles out into the desert. Then God sent an angel of death to kill every firstborn child in Egypt. However, the death angel would pass over the Jewish households that sprinkled a lamb's blood over the entrance to their homes, hence the Passover. To read all about it, you would have to visit the book of Exodus and read chapters 7 through 12. Now, Jerusalem was a city that God had chose for his temple habitation among the Jews. Not that God was physically living in the temple, but it was the place that the Jewish people were to make the prescribed sacrifices for sins and celebrate certain feasts and days. And it was a holy place, dedicated to God. And although no one would understand it at the time, in a real sense, it was a place that also belonged to Jesus. But note that Jesus did not claim anything for himself. It was a zeal for his Father's house. It was Jesus' overwhelming passion that the holy things of God should never be mixed with the things that are not holy, such as making money and lowly animals. But let's not misunderstand. Making money is not a bad thing, and animals are not a bad thing. God created the animals, and he gave guidelines to the Jews that would govern how they trade with each other in the marketplace. Neither was it wrong to exchange various currency and coinage that was not minted from the purest silver with coinage that was minted from the purest silver that could be found, so people could pay the temple tax. But those things were to be done outside the holy place, and they were to be done with integrity. Regarding Jesus' answer to the question about a sign, what seems to be a strange thing for him to say is actually going to serve as additional proof that he knew all along that his mission here on earth was to die for sinners like you and me. It's important to know that Jesus was not forced to take on this quest, but that he knew he was going to die, and he willingly accepted this path. Additionally, saying what he did here was another helpful proof to his disciples that he was the long-awaited Messiah. So let's wrap it up. We need to be careful how we talk about God. He's not our buddy or the quote-unquote man upstairs, as some would call him. God is exponentially different from us. He is all-powerful. He is perfectly holy. And he deserves our careful reverence. At the same time, we need to understand that he is a God who wants to have a relationship with us. And he's created a path for that to happen in a beautiful way through what Jesus Christ has done. Pray today that God will give you a sense of his holiness and his perfection. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.